The green Moleskine notebook sits on a forensic examination table in October 2024. The cover is warped, rigid with 12 years of being underground. The page is separate when touched, not torn but transformed, the paper gone thick and strange, preserved by cold soil and the particular chemistry of burial. A small evidence tag dangles from a plastic sleeve, item 7B. Sinclair M. recovered 11/03/24. The notebook opens to page 47. October 9, 2012. 2 days before Mara Sinclair vanished, the entry is dated, time to the minute, 7:42 p.m. a Wednesday evening. Her handwriting, precise and small, fills half the page. The forensic examiner's gloved hands turn the page with care. The text is legible. Every word survived. What Mara wrote on October 9th would take 12 years to be read. And when it was finally read, it would name the man who killed her. But on October 11, 2012, when Mara Sinclair walked out of Whitmore Falls Regional High School at 3:14 p.m., none of that had happened yet. Page 47 existed, written, dated, tucked inside the green notebook in her backpack. But it was just another entry, just another observation. Just Mara being Mara, noticing things, writing them down, trying to understand the world before deciding what she thought about it. Before we go back to October 2012, I need you to understand who Mara Sinclair was. Because who she was is the only reason any of this gets resolved. For 12 years, her father David would fill a yellow legal pad with 413 entries, every tip, every dead end, every day he refused to stop searching. For 12 years, investigators would log 100 tips that led nowhere. For 12 years, her mother Sandra would stand at Palmer and Aldrich at 3:30 p.m. on Thursdays waiting for a daughter who would never round that corner. And for 12 years, page 47 would wait underground. Now, October 11, 2012. October 11, 2012 was a Thursday. It was 57 degrees and dropping. The autumn air carried the smell of wet earth from last night's rain and the faint industrial sweet scent of the cafeteria's afternoon cleanup drifting across the parking lot. The light arrived thin and silver, the kind that makes everything look temporary. Mara Sinclair woke at 6:52 a.m., 4 minutes before her alarm, the way she always did, and lay in bed listening to the house arrange itself for morning. Her mother's coffee maker hissing downstairs. The neighbor's car backing out of a driveway. The sound of October, quiet, precise, ordinary. She didn't know this was the last normal day. She stood at the kitchen counter at 7:05 a.m., eating toast with peanut butter, drinking orange juice from a glass that had a small chip in the rim her mother kept meaning to throw away. She read her notebook while she ate, standing instead of sitting. Her bent wire-rimmed glasses sliding down her nose until she pushed them back up with her index finger. Not her thumb, her index finger. She'd always done it that way, and the gesture had left a small permanent red mark on the bridge of her nose that she'd stopped noticing years ago. At 7:22 a.m., she packed her bag, green Moleskine, 3 identical mechanical pencils with 0.5 mm lead, peppermint lip balm with the cap missing since August. Her library copy of Silent Spring that she was reading for the 3rd time, her student ID, her iPhone 4 with the cracked screen in the lower right corner from when she dropped it in June. She checked the contents twice, adjusted the notebook until it sat parallel to the edge of the table, checked again. "I'll text you when I'm out," she told her mother at 7:31 a.m., and Sandra Sinclair looked up from her own coffee, her own morning, and saw her daughter in the doorway, 16, slight, wearing her favorite gray hoodie with the drawstrings she'd chewed the ends of until they frayed. She looked so young. She looked exactly like she always looked. They had rituals, the Sinclairs. Every Sunday, Sandra and Mara made tea together. Sandra chose the flavor. Mara timed the steep on her phone and announced the countdown with 30 seconds left. They didn't talk much during those 5 minutes. Just stood in the kitchen together, waiting. Every Saturday morning, David and Mara drove to the Whitmore Falls Farmers Market and split a breakfast burrito from the Garcia's cart. The elderly couple who remembered their order, who'd watched Mara grow from 9 to 16. David would describe what he saw. Mara would write something in her notebook. They didn't talk about big things, just small observations, the architecture of a normal life. "Love you," Sandra said. "You too," Mara said, and walked out the door. The school day unfolded in its usual architecture. Mara sat through first period English, second period history, third period where she took notes on the Industrial Revolution in handwriting so neat it looked typeset. She ate lunch with Caitlin Ibarra at their usual table, the one by the window that overlooked the parking lot. They'd sat there since 7th grade. They had rituals. Caitlin always brought extra cookies. Mara always forgot her napkin. They both complained about homework they'd end up doing anyway. "You ready for bio?" Caitlin asked. Mara held her breath for exactly 3 seconds. Caitlin could see her jaw set slightly, the way it always did when she was uncertain about something but trying not to show it. Then, fine, which Caitlin knew meant she'd aced it already in her head, had studied until she could recite the entire unit. Had done the extra credit before the test was even announced. At 3:10 p.m. the final bell rang. Mara stood at her locker gathering her things. The hallway filled with the specific chaos of Thursday afternoon, locker slams, conversations layering over each other, the fluorescent light third from the left flickering every 41 seconds the way it always did. She'd timed it once with her phone, documented it in her notebook. The small facts of the world. She had AP Biology 7th period. The test she told Caitlin she felt fine about. She'd used her peppermint lip balm before the exam, the way she always did before tests, before phone calls that made her nervous, before moments that required a small ritual to mark their importance. The smell of peppermint had become, for Mara Sinclair, the scent of her daughter herself, sharp, clean, medicinal sweet. They did their two-finger salute, their signature goodbye since 7th grade. Then Caitlin climbed into her mother's car and Mara turned left out of the east entrance, heading toward Palmer Street. The walk home was 7/10 of a mile. Mara had measured it once with her phone's GPS, written the exact distance in her notebook, 0.7 miles, 232 meters, approximately 14 minutes at her usual pace. She knew the route the way you know the geography of home, every crack in the sidewalk, every house with the motion sensor light that clicked on too early, the corner store where the owner always had CNN playing too loud on a small TV behind the counter. Sandra was working a shift at the hospital until 3:00 p.m., wouldn't be home until 3:45. Mara had her key. She'd let herself in, drop her backpack on the kitchen table. Text her mother like she always did, "I'm out," 2 words, their Thursday ritual. She walked down Palmer Street with her backpack on both shoulders, her green notebook inside, page 47 already written, already dated October 9th, already containing the words that would matter 12 years later. The October afternoon was cool, 57 degrees and dropping. The air smelled like wet earth and distant wood smoke from someone burning leaves, even though the burn ban was still in effect. At the corner of Palmer and Aldrich, Mara always stood slightly to the left because if someone turned without looking, they wouldn't hit her. She'd explained this to Caitlin once years ago, and Caitlin had never forgotten it. The way Mara thought about the world, always half a step to the left of danger. She checked her phone. 3:16 p.m. 12 minutes from home. A green sedan pulled up beside her, not to the curb, beside her, close enough that she had to step back. The driver's window rolled down. Mara looked up. 17 minutes, that's all it took. 17 minutes between Caitlin's two-finger salute at 3:14 p.m. and the moment Mara Sinclair vanished at 3:31 p.m. Somewhere in those 17 minutes, she got into that green sedan, or was pulled into it, or fought against getting into it and lost. The street was empty. No witnesses, no cameras, no one saw. By 4:38 p.m. when Mara Sinclair arrived home from her shift and found no text message waiting, no backpack on the kitchen table, no daughter reading at the counter with a glass of orange juice and a chipped rim, she knew. Caitlin's mother pulled away from the curb at 3:15 p.m., Caitlin already looking at her phone, already thinking about homework and dinner and all the small concerns of a Thursday afternoon. Caitlin did not watch Mara turn the corner. No Mara, no backpack, no bent wire-rimmed glasses catching the October light. Just an empty corner and a Thursday afternoon and the beginning of 12 years of silence. At 4:38 p.m. on October 11, 2012, Sandra Sinclair unlocked her front door with her hospital ID badge still clipped to her scrubs. The house was quiet in the wrong way, not peaceful quiet, absent quiet, no backpack on the kitchen table, no glass with orange juice residue in the sink, no Mara standing at the counter reading while she ate an apple, pushing her bent glasses up with her index finger, existing in the specific space she always occupied at 4:38 p.m. on a Thursday. Sandra checked her phone. No text, no I'm out, the two words that had arrived every school day for 4 years, as reliable as the 4:15 p.m. timestamp, as certain as Mara herself. She called Mara's phone straight to voicemail. The generic recording, not Mara's voice. She called again, voicemail, again, voicemail. At 4:51 p.m. Sandra called the school. The administrative office had closed at 4:30. She called David's cell. He was 40 minutes north at a construction site in Longview, reviewing foundation plans for a mixed-use development. He answered on the second ring because Sandra never called during work hours unless something was wrong. Mara didn't text, Sandra said. David heard the edge in her voice, the fear trying to disguise itself as irritation. She probably stayed after for something, science club, extra help. She would have texted, Sandra said. She always texts. Call Caitlin. David said, already walking toward his truck. She'll know. Caitlin answered on the second ring. No, she hadn't seen Mara since 3:14. Yes, Mara had seemed normal. Yes, she'd said she was walking home like always. No, nothing weird, just a normal Thursday. At 5:03 p.m., Sandra got in her car and drove the route Mara would have walked. Palmer Street to Aldrich Avenue to Hemlock Drive to their house on Cascade Court. 7/10 of a mile. And she drove it slowly, looking at sidewalks, at yards, at the corner store, at every place Mara might have stopped, might have been delayed, might be standing right now with a reasonable explanation. She parked at the Palmer/Aldrich corner and got out. She walked half a block in each direction, calling Mara's name twice, once north, once east. Her voice sounded small against the October afternoon. A passing driver slowed, saw a woman standing in the street calling a name, and continued driving. The streets were empty. At 5:47 p.m., Sandra Sinclair walked into the Whitmore Falls Police Department and said 6 words that would define the next 12 years of her life. My daughter didn't come home today. The officer at the desk, Marcus Delray, 29, 8 years on the force, looked up with practiced sympathy that hadn't yet learned to recognize the difference between worried parent and knowing parent. How old is she? Delray asked. 16. When did you last see her? This morning, 7:31, she left for school. Delray nodded, already reaching for the standard missing teen form. Does she have a boyfriend? Any reason she might? No, Sandra said, not angry, absolutely certain. My daughter is a precise, careful, brilliant person who has texted me every single day after school for 4 years. She did not text me today. She did not come home. Something is wrong. Something in Sandra's voice made Delray stop writing and actually look at her. Really look. See past the worried mother stereotype to the truth underneath. This woman knew her daughter, and her daughter was missing. Delray picked up his phone. Later, he would tell Detective Vasquez. The mother knew. You learn to trust when a parent knows. By 6:15 p.m., Detective Rhonda Vasquez arrived. 41 years old, 17 years with Whitmore Falls PD, methodical to the point of stubbornness. She was the kind of investigator who rebuilt timelines from scratch even when other detectives said they already had them, who color-coded witness statements by reliability, who believed that missing person cases were solved in the gaps between what people remembered and what actually happened. She sat across from Sandra in an interview room that smelled like burned coffee and asked questions in a voice that didn't dismiss her. Tell me about Mara, Vasquez said. Not describe your daughter. Not when did you notice she was gone. Tell me about her. Make her real. Sandra did. The bent glasses, the green notebook, the peppermint lip balm, the way she stood to the left of corners. The way she measured things, distances, temperatures, the intervals between traffic light changes. And she described a girl who noticed things, who wrote things down, who had applied to summer science programs without telling anyone because she wanted to be sure first, to understand fully before sharing. She's not the kind of kid who runs away, Sandra said. She's the kind of kid who plans, who measures, who would have left a note. Vasquez believed her. Not because she was particularly intuitive, but because she'd learned to trust the parents who spoke in present tense, who didn't hedge, who knew their children well enough to know when something was categorically wrong. At 6:02 p.m., David Sinclair left the Longview construction site, still in his work boots, still carrying the blueprints he'd been reviewing when Sandra called. He drove south on I-5 doing 15 over the limit the entire way. He arrived at the Whitmore Falls Police Department at 6:49 p.m. and found Sandra in the parking lot. Found Vasquez explaining what would happen next. "We need to search," David said. "Right now while it's still, Mr. Sinclair," Vasquez said, and her voice was gentle in a way that made David's throat close. "It's dark. We'll have officers out tonight with flashlights, but an organized search at night with civilians is dangerous. We'll start at first light. I promise you we start at first light." David opened his mouth, closed it, nodded once. David Sinclair didn't sleep that night. At 8:12 a.m. on October 13th, after 48 hours of searching that had yielded nothing, he sat at his kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a blue ballpoint pen. He wrote at the top of the first page in his civil engineer's precise print entry 1 October 13, 2012. 8:12 a.m. below that, green sedan, partial plate 7 or T plus K, start here. Someone had seen something. Someone always saw something. He just had to find them, catalog them, track them, organize them until the pattern emerged. That's what engineers did. They found patterns. They solved problems. He would solve this problem. He would find his daughter. The next morning arrived gray and cold. By 7:00 a.m., 43 volunteers had gathered in the Whitmore Falls High School parking lot, teachers, students, parents, people who'd never met Mara Sinclair but understood that when a 16-year-old girl vanished on her walk home, you showed up. Vasquez divided them into teams, assigned sectors, handed out photocopied maps with Mara's route highlighted in yellow marker. "Look for anything that doesn't belong," Vasquez said. "Clothing, phone, backpack, notebook, glasses, anything." They found nothing. For 3 days they searched. Whitmore Falls Regional Park. The wetlands preserve Mara had written about wanting to study. The construction sites off Route 34 where houses were being built in what used to be forest. They walked the ditches along Palmer Street, the drainage culverts, the wooded lots behind the shopping center where teenagers sometimes went to be invisible. They found nothing. No backpack, no green notebook, no bent wire-rimmed glasses, no iPhone with a cracked screen, no Mara. On October 12th at 2:15 p.m., Daniel Holt called the Whitmore Falls Police Department and asked to speak to whoever was investigating the Mara Sinclair case. He was transferred to Detective Vasquez's desk. "I'm one of Mara's teachers," Holt said. "English, I think I might have information." Vasquez grabbed a pen. "Go ahead." On Wednesday, October 9th, Mara came to my classroom during lunch. She does that sometimes, uses the room to read when the cafeteria's too loud. She was sitting by the window and she had her notebook out and she was writing something. I asked if she was okay. She said she was fine, just documenting something. Documenting what? She said there was a dark green sedan, older model, that had been parked at the Palmer and Aldrich intersection 3 times in the past week when she walked home. Always around 3:30. She said it was statistically weird. Those were her exact words. Statistically weird. She'd written down a partial plate. She showed it to me. Vasquez's hand tightened on the pen. "What was the plate?" She said it was either a 7 or a T, then a K, Oregon plates. She couldn't see the rest because of the angle. But she said the same car, same spot, 3 times in 5 days. She wanted to know if that was something she should report. "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was probably nothing, but if she saw it again, she should mention it to her parents or to campus security." Holt's voice cracked slightly. "I told her it was probably nothing." "Mr. Holt," Vasquez said carefully, "you did exactly what a reasonable person would do. You had no way of knowing." But Holt did know, would know for the next 12 years. Would carry it in the specific way teachers carry the students they failed to protect. In November 2024, Daniel Holt would sit in his car in the school parking lot and read 3 paragraphs from the district attorney's office that would tell him he'd been right all along, that Mara had documented her own danger, that her notebook had survived to name her killer. We'll come back to that. But in October 2012, he was just a teacher sitting at his desk with the phone pressed to his ear, offering the only clue they had. Vasquez pulled every Oregon DMV record for plates with that partial sequence. Then she cross-referenced against green sedans. Then she drew a 2-mile radius around Palmer and Aldrich and pulled every registered owner within that boundary, 17 vehicles. She interviewed all 17 owners over the next 3 days. Elderly couples, college students, a contractor who'd been in Seattle the entire week of October 11th, a single mother with 3 kids under 5 who'd been at a pediatrician's office at 3:30 p.m. on Thursday. None of them yielded a lead. The boundary Vasquez drew was 2 miles. The man who took Mara lived 3 miles away in a rental house on the outskirts of town with a detached garage and no neighbors close enough to hear anything. The answer was always just outside the boundary someone drew. On October 12th, the phone company sent over carrier records. Mara's iPhone had last contacted a cell tower at 3:31 p.m., the tower at Palmer and 19th Street, 1 block east of the Palmer/Aldrich corner. After 3:31 p.m., the phone was dark. No calls, no texts, no pings. It was a silence that had been engineered. The phone was never found. On October 22nd, 11 days after Mara vanished, the story hit the Portland news. Local anchors showed Mara's school photo, the one where she was touching her grandmother's locket, smiling slightly, looking younger than 16. They showed the intersection at Palmer and Aldrich. They showed Mara Sinclair's face as she read a prepared statement asking anyone with information to please call. The tip line received 127 calls in the first 48 hours. David logged every single one in his yellow legal pad. Entry -14, woman saw green sedan on Highway 20. Entry -27, anonymous caller said check the ex-boyfriend, Mara didn't have an ex-boyfriend. Entry -53, psychic claimed Mara was near water, Oregon had 6,000 miles of rivers. None of them led anywhere. By November 2012, the dedicated search teams had stopped meeting. By December, the news stations stopped calling for updates. By January 2013, Detective Vasquez had 3 new active cases and Mara's file sat in a box marked open/cold on a shelf in the records room. But Vasquez didn't forget. She kept Mara's school photo on her desk, not displayed prominently, just tucked into the corner of her bulletin board where she'd see it every morning. A reminder of the 17 green sedans, the 2-mile radius, the boundary that had been too small. And Mara Sinclair still drove to Palmer and Aldrich every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. and stood at the corner waiting. David still filled his yellow legal pad line by line, entry by entry. And somewhere in the October earth, in a place no one had looked, Mara's green notebook waited with page 47 intact. The first year is survival. Barely. Sandra loses her job at the hospital in March 2013, can't focus, can't function, can't measure medication dosages when her hands shake every time a teenage girl walks past the nurse's station. By June, she's transferred to a walk-in clinic in southeast Portland where the pace is slower and no one knows about Mara unless Sandra tells them, which she doesn't. By August, she takes up running, not for fitness, for the specific exhaustion that quiets the mind enough to sleep. She runs a 7-mile loop every Saturday morning that passes within 2 blocks of Whitmore Falls High School, past the east entrance where Mara said goodbye to Caitlin, past the corner of Palmer and Aldrich that she cannot bring herself to look at directly. She runs this loop for 3 years, every Saturday. 7 miles, rain or shine. David takes on extra freelance projects, works nights and weekends, tries to keep the mortgage current and the lights on and the website hosting paid. In June 2013, he launches Find Mara Sinclair. Org, a single page with Mara's photo, the tip line number, a map of her last known route. The first year it gets 400 visits. By year 4, it's down to 200. At home, Sandra sets Mara's blue ceramic mug out on the counter every morning for 14 months. Just sets it there, next to her own coffee cup, as if Mara might walk downstairs at 7:05 and pour orange juice into it. She knows Mara won't. She sets it out anyway. In January 2014, she moves it to the back of the cabinet where she doesn't have to see it every day. She sleeps in Mara's room, not in the bed on the floor beside the desk. The room smells of still air and furniture polish, and underneath it for the first years, a specific emptiness that Sandra cannot name until she finally understands it is the permanent absence of peppermint. On a Sunday in November 2012, David sorts through the mail the way he always does, bills in one pile, catalogs in another, junk in the recycling. He finds a letter addressed to Mara Sinclair. Return address, University of Oregon, Department of Environmental Studies. He recognizes the letterhead. Mara had written to a professor there about volunteering in his lab. David holds the envelope for a long time. Then he places it carefully on the corner of the kitchen table in a pile he labels in pencil Mara's. It sits there for 3 months. In February 2013, Sandra opens it. The letter is 2 paragraphs, warm and encouraging. The professor is impressed by Mara's questions. He'd be happy to have her volunteer during summer 2013. He includes his direct email and phone number. He signs it, looking forward to meeting you. Sandra reads it twice, folds it back along its original creases, carries it to Mara's room and places it on the desk next to the annotated wetlands paper still taped to the inside of the closet door. Then she sits on Mara's bed for 19 minutes without moving. This is when Sandra Sinclair truly understands the word missing. Not gone, not lost. Missing. Present tense. Continuous, a state that doesn't resolve. David fills his yellow legal pad, one thick spiral-bound notebook with pages that thin as they are turned, entries that accumulate in blue ballpoint. By 2015, the handwriting is smaller, tighter, the entries shorter. Entry -47, January 19, 2013, anonymous tip. Green sedan near Cascade Park. Checked. Wrong year, wrong owner. Entry -83, April 2, 2013, possible sighting Portland bus station. Not her. Entry -129, September 14, 2013, psychic called near water and trees. Oregon is water and trees. Entry -237, June 8, 2014, website visits down to 400/month. Entry -344, October 11, 2015, 3 years, still nothing. By 2017, the pad is nearly full. Entry -412 will be the last one he writes. Caitlin Ibarra sends the first of the month text every month for 18 months. November 2012, December 2012, January 2013. Each one the same format, the month's name and a single emoji carefully chosen to be accurate, not obvious. The way she and Mara used to do it. Sandra's phone chimes at midnight on the first of every month, and for 18 months she reads Caitlin's text and doesn't know whether to feel grateful or devastated. In April 2014, the texts stop. Caitlin is a sophomore at University of Oregon now, studying social work, trying to build a life that isn't defined entirely by the friend she lost. She still thinks about Mara every day. She just stops sending the texts. Sandra notices the silence. Doesn't blame her. Detective Vasquez works the case when she can, which isn't often enough. She carries 42 open investigations, and Mara's file keeps sinking lower in the priority stack. But every Friday at 4:00 p.m., Vasquez calls the tip line intake herself, even after she's promoted to sergeant in 2016, even when it's someone else's job to check. She listens to the week's tips, logs the relevant ones, follows up on anything that might lead somewhere. Most of them don't. She rebuilds Mara's timeline twice, once in 2013, once in 2015, color-coding every witness statement by reliability, mapping every minute of October 11, 2012, looking for gaps, contradictions, the thing everyone missed. She keeps coming back to the same conclusion: the 2-mile radius was too small. The boundary was wrong. The answer was 3 miles outside the circle she'd drawn, but without knowing which direction to expand, she's just guessing. 8 vigils are held between 2012 and 2020. October anniversaries, Mara's birthdays, community gatherings organized by families who understand what the Sinclairs are living through. Daniel Holt attends all 8, standing in the back, never speaking, never approaching Sandra or David. Just present. bearing witness, carrying the specific guilt of the teacher who told a student it's probably nothing 2 days before she vanished. At the 2019 vigil, 7 years, the October wind is sharp enough to make eyes water and the smell of wet leaves fills the high school parking lot. 43 people attend, down from 200 at the first vigil. Holt stands in the back and watches Sandra light a candle that the wind keeps extinguishing. She lights it 7 times before giving up. The tips accumulate. David logs 100 of them over 12 years. Some are well-meaning, some are cruel, some are from people who genuinely believe they saw something. By 2020, the tip line goes weeks without a single call. The case doesn't close, it just goes quiet. There's a specific kind of grief reserved for the families of the missing. It isn't the grief of loss, it's the grief of an open loop. The not knowing that stretches forward infinitely, that never resolves, that makes every phone call potentially the call, every knock on the door potentially the news. Sandra still set the mug out for 14 months. David still drove to the farmer's market on Saturdays, still stood at the Garcia's cart where he and Mara used to split a breakfast burrito. Caitlin still felt the reflex to text October every year on the 1st of the month, even though she'd stopped actually sending them. Ambiguous loss doesn't let you grieve, it just makes you wait. By 2021, Sandra has stopped running the 7-mile loop past the school. By 2022, David's website traffic is down to 20 visits a month, most of them bots. By 2023, Detective Vasquez retires after 26 years with Whitmore Falls PD, and the case transfers to Detective Raymond Cho, who reads the file cover to cover and comes to the same conclusions everyone else did. Someone was watching, the boundary was too small, without new evidence there's nowhere to look. Mara's 11th birthday without her, her 12th. Mara would be 27 in March 2023. Would have finished graduate school by now, probably. Would be working on wetland restoration projects in Washington or Oregon or California, making the world incrementally better in the specific measured way she approached everything. But Mara is 16, frozen, permanent, and somewhere in the October Earth off Route 34 in a construction zone that won't break ground for another year, a green Moleskine notebook waits with page 47 intact. The entry dated October 9, 2012. The handwriting that survived 12 years underground. The words that will finally name him. On September 14, 2024, a construction crew arrives at the Route 34 site to begin preliminary excavation for a housing development. By 10:47 a.m., they will have found something that will change everything. But that's Act 4. For now, it's just 12 years of waiting. 12 years of Sandra running past the school every Saturday until she can't anymore. 12 years of David's yellow legal pad filling with entries that lead nowhere. 12 years of Vasquez rebuilding timelines and checking the tip line every Friday at 4:00 p.m. 12 years of Daniel Holt standing in the back of vigils, carrying guilt like a stone. 12 years of Mara staying 16, staying missing, staying documented on page 47 of a notebook no one has found yet. September 14, 2024. 10:47 a.m. The utility crew is 7 miles east of Whitmore Falls on Hargrove Road, a rural 2-lane that dead-ends into state forest land, digging a trench for fiber optic cable when the backhoe blade catches something that isn't earth. The foreman's name is Luis Ortega. He's been doing this work for 19 years. He knows the sound metal makes when it hits rock, when it hits clay, when it hits the compacted soil you get near old creek beds. This sound is different, softer. Wrong, he signals the operator to stop, climbs down, walks to where the blade has scraped something loose. The smell hits him first, not decomposition, it's been too long for that, just earth, old earth. Cold earth disturbed after 12 years of stillness. Then he sees the fabric, gray canvas, and beneath it the curved white of bone. Luis Ortega has 2 daughters, 16 and 14. He pulls his phone and dials 911 before he lets himself think too hard about what he's looking at. "We found human remains," he says. "Hargrove Road, mile marker 7, it's been here a long time." By 11:23 a.m., the Whitmore Falls Police Department has secured the site. By 11:45 a.m., Detective Raymond Cho is standing at the edge of the excavation wearing latex gloves and the expression of someone who spent 3 years carrying a file he thought might never close. By 12:30 p.m., the forensic recovery team arrives. Dr. Sarah Kim, the state's senior forensic anthropologist, 23 years of doing this work, directs the excavation. They work slowly, photographs first, measurements, grid markers, then brushes and trowels and gloved hands moving soil grain by grain. They find her by 2:15 p.m. Skeletal remains, adolescent female, small frame. The bones arranged in a way that suggests she'd been placed here carefully, not dumped. Buried shallow, 3 feet down in soil that's cold and clay-heavy, the kind that preserves. Then the objects. An iPhone 4 screen completely shattered, 3 mechanical pencils with 0.5 mm lead, still together in what had been a jacket pocket. A student ID card, the plastic warped but the photo still visible, auburn hair, pale green eyes, bent wire-rimmed glasses. A tube of peppermint lip balm, cap missing, and a gray canvas backpack. The left shoulder strap still wrapped in the duct tape Mara had used to repair it in September 2012 after it tore during gym class. Dr. Kim lifts the backpack carefully, unzips it. Inside, a library copy of Silent Spring, the checkout card still visible. A spiral notebook with AP Biology written on the cover in blue pen, a mechanical pencil inside the spiral binding, and a green moleskine notebook with a warped cover, pages gone thick and strange with 12 years underground. Kim opens it to page 1. The handwriting is small, precise, dated, and timed to the minute. She turns pages slowly, carefully. Page 10, page 20, page 35, page 47. She reads it once, reads it again, looks up at Detective Cho. "You need to see this," she says. Cho walks over. Kim hands him the notebook, open to page 47. He sees the date first, October 9, 2012, 2 days before Mara vanished. "I'm going to read you what she wrote," Cho says quietly, though he's speaking to no one in particular. Maybe to himself, maybe to Mara. Word for word. Because she deserves to have it read exactly as she wrote it. October 9, 2012, 7:42 p.m. Palmer/Aldrich Corner, 3:19 p.m. Dark green sedan, older model, partial plate, 7 or T followed by what may be a K, parked facing east, engine running, no driver visible from this angle. Third consecutive day at same location within plus or minus 4 minutes of school dismissal. Duration of observation, approx. 6 min before departure heading east. Driver's side mirror bent inward, appears old, damage not recent, statistically non-random. Note to self, if this continues, report to campus security. Mentioned to Mr. Holt today, he said probably nothing but to monitor. Will document full plate if I see it Thursday. Secondary note, if someone is reading this and I'm not available to explain. This observation was made from a position of caution, not paranoia. The pattern is real. Cho's hands are shaking by the time he finishes. He looks at Dr. Kim. She documented her own stalker, he says, 2 days before he took her, and she gave us the one detail that's going to identify him. The bent mirror, Kim asks. The bent mirror, Cho confirms. That's not something you see on every car. That's damage that shows up in vehicle inspection records. At 3:45 p.m., dental records confirm what everyone already knew. The remains are Mara Juliette Sinclair, 16 years old, missing since October 11, 2012. The small gold chain found near the cervical vertebrae still holds her grandmother's locket. Inside, pressed violets, faded but intact. At 4:00 p.m., Cho catalogs the forensic inventory. Everything Mara had been carrying that day is accounted for. Except one thing, the bent wire-rimmed glasses. The ones she pushed up with her index finger, the ones that left a permanent red mark on her nose bridge, the ones Caitlin saw her wearing at 3:14 p.m. on October 11 are not with the remains, they're missing. Taken, kept, Cho makes a note of it. At 5:30 p.m., Cho sits in his office at the station and opens the 2012 case file. He finds Detective Vasquez's original canvas notes. 17 green sedans registered within a 2-mile radius of Palmer and Aldrich. All 17 owners interviewed and cleared. He pulls the partial plate from Mara's notebook, 7 or T followed by K. He runs it through the 2012 Oregon DMV database. Green sedans, plate starting with 7K or TK, 43 results statewide. Then he adds the second filter, driver's side mirror bent inward, old damage. Vehicle inspection records from 2010-2012. Looking for damage notes on driver's side mirrors. The list narrows to 6 vehicles. Then he applies the geographic filter, registered owners within 20 miles of Whitmore Falls in October 2012. 2 vehicles remain. One is a 2008 Toyota Camry registered to an 82-year-old woman in Eugene who hasn't driven in 3 years. The other is a 2001 Honda Accord dark green registered to Raymond Greaves. Plate number 7KJ492. Registered address in 2012, 1847 Hargrove Road, Whitmore Falls, Oregon. The same road where Mara's remains were found, 7 miles from Palmer and Aldrich. Cho pulls up a map, measures the distance from Palmer and Aldrich to Hargrove Road. 3 miles. Outside Detective Vasquez's 2-mile radius by exactly 3 miles. The boundary had been reasonable, methodical, based on standard protocol. It had just been too small. Cho pulls Greaves's 2012 driver's license photo. White male, date of birth March 15, 1961, 51 years old in October 2012. Matches Mara's description. Then he pulls Greaves's employment records from 2012. Biology teacher, McKinley Middle School. 3 blocks from Whitmore Falls Regional High School. Cho's stomach drops. Greaves worked 3 blocks from where Mara went to school, would have seen her, would have known her route, would have had access to the same parking lots, the same dismissal times, the same Thursday afternoons. He pulls Greaves's current address, no longer Hargrove Road. In 2014, Greaves moved to Bend, Oregon, 130 miles southeast. Current address, 847 NW 14th Street, Bend. Cho pulls vehicle registration records. The 2001 Honda Accord was sold in 2015 to a private buyer in Redmond, Oregon. The buyer scrapped it in 2018. The car is gone, but Greaves is findable. At 6:45 p.m., Cho calls the number he's been carrying in his phone for 3 years. Retired Detective Rhonda Vasquez answers on the second ring. Rhonda Vasquez, Detective Vasquez, it's Raymond Cho, we found her. Silence, then where? Hargrove Road, 7 miles east, fiber optic crew digging a trench. Hargrove Road, Vasquez says slowly. That's 3 miles from Palmer and Aldrich, outside your 2-mile radius. Vasquez is quiet for a long moment. Then what did you find with her? Her notebook. She documented the car 2 days before she vanished. Partial plate vehicle description. And one detail you wouldn't have had in 2012. The driver's side mirror was bent inward, old damage. That's specific. Specific enough to cross-reference with inspection records. It narrows to one vehicle. 2001 Honda Accord, plate 7KJ492, registered to Raymond Greaves. Greaves, Vasquez says, I know that name. He was on your list, one of the 17 green sedans you canvassed. He was cleared. Vasquez says immediately, I interviewed him myself. October 15, 2012. He had an alibi for October 11. He was at McKinley Middle School until 4:30 p.m. for parent-teacher conferences. We confirmed it. His alibi covered 4:30 p.m., Cho says. Mara vanished at 3:31. The silence on the other end of the line is the sound of a detective understanding that she'd checked the right person and asked the wrong question. Where is he now? Vasquez asks. Bend, moved there in 2014, still teaching biology, different school. I'm coordinating with Bend PD for the arrest. When? We're building the warrant now. Arrest is scheduled for November 3rd. I'll call you after. Raymond, Vasquez says, and her voice is careful, controlled, the voice of someone who's about to say something that matters. Tell the family that Mara was brilliant. Tell them she saw the pattern, documented it, and left us exactly what we needed. Tell them she solved her own case. I will, Cho says. At 7:30 p.m., Cho drives to Cascade Court. He parks in the driveway of a house he's driven past 100 times in 3 years, always meaning to stop, never quite able to bring himself to knock on the door with nothing new to say. This time is different. Sandra Sinclair opens the door before he knocks. She's been standing at the window. The way she stood at windows for 12 years waiting for news that never came. Until now, she sees Cho's face, knows immediately. You found her, Sandra says, not a question, a statement, 12 years of waiting ending in 2 words. Cho nods. Mrs. Sinclair, is your husband home? David appears in the doorway behind Sandra. Retired now, hair gone gray. Still wearing the same work boots he wore in 2012 because some habits don't change even when everything else does. They sit in the living room. Cho tells them Hargrove Road, the remains, the identification, the notebook. She documented everything, Cho says. 2 days before she disappeared, she wrote down the car, the partial plate, the bent mirror. She saw the pattern, she knew something was wrong, and what she wrote is how we identified him. Sandra's hand goes to her mouth. David closes his eyes. His name is Raymond Greaves, Cho continues. He was a biology teacher at McKinley Middle School in 2012, 3 blocks from the high school. He's been living in Bend since 2014. We're arresting him on November 3rd. Did she suffer? David asks, the engineer's brain still trying to process data it doesn't want to process. The medical examiner is still working. Cho says carefully, but Mr. Sinclair, Mrs. Sinclair, your daughter left us everything we needed. She was brilliant. She was observant. She tried to protect herself, and when she couldn't, she made sure we'd be able to find who did this. After Cho leaves, Sandra and David sit in silence for 19 minutes. The same silence Sandra sat in after reading the UO professor's letter in February 2013. The silence of understanding that the question they've been living with for 12 years has finally been answered, and the answer is the one they've known all along but could never quite accept. Finally, Sandra speaks. She wrote it down. She always wrote everything down, David says. She tried. She did more than try, she solved it. Even from David can't finish the sentence. Sandra nods, understands what he can't say. Even from the grave, Mara had been precise, observant, methodical, had documented the pattern, had left the evidence. Had done everything a 16-year-old could do when someone was watching her and she didn't yet know if she should be afraid. The answer was yes, she should have been afraid, but she'd done everything right anyway. On November 3, 2024 at 6:47 a.m., Detective Raymond Cho will coordinate with Bend Police Department to arrest Raymond Douglas Greaves at his home on NW 14th Street. Greaves will offer no resistance, will say nothing except "I'd like to call my lawyer." But that's Act 5. For now, it's September 14, 2024, and Mara Sinclair has finally come home, not the way anyone wanted, but home. And the man who took her has a name and address, and 49 days left of freedom. November 3, 2024, 7:14 a.m. Raymond Douglas Greaves is making coffee in his kitchen on NW 14th Street in Bend, Oregon when he hears the knock, not the doorbell, a knock, the kind law enforcement uses, solid, authoritative, final. He sets down his mug, walks to the door, opens it. Detective Raymond Cho stands on the porch with 4 Bend police officers behind him. Raymond Douglas Greaves. Cho says, "Yes, I'm Detective Cho, Whitmore Falls Police Department. We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the 2012 abduction and murder of Mara Juliet Sinclair. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Greaves's carefully neutral expression cracks, just for a second, just enough to say the girl who was always riding. Cho's jaw tightens. "Turn around now." Greaves complies. Cho secures the handcuffs. At the Bend Police Department, Cho sits across from Greaves in an interrogation room. Greaves has invoked his right to an attorney, but Cho says it anyway, needs to say it. "We found the backpack, Raymond. We found everything she was carrying." Greaves says nothing, just looks at the table. "She wrote about you," Cho continues. October 9, 2012. Documented the car, the plate, the bent mirror, documented you. A 16-year-old girl saw the pattern you thought you were hiding, and she left us exactly what we needed. Greaves still says nothing, won't say anything, never does. At 8:02 a.m., Sandra Sinclair's phone rings. She's been awake since 4:30, hasn't slept properly since September 14, since Cho told her they'd found Mara. She sees Cho's name on the screen, answers. Mrs. Sinclair, we arrested Raymond Greaves this morning at 7:14 a.m. He's in custody. I wanted you to hear it from me before it hits the news. Sandra walks to the kitchen, presses her palm flat against the table, fingers spread, grounding herself, making the moment real. Thank you, she says. Thank you for calling. She hangs up, stands there with her hand on the table for a long moment, then she calls David. They got him, she says. David is silent. Then when? This morning, 7:14. Okay, David says just that. Okay, he hangs up, walks to his desk. Opens the drawer where his yellow legal pad has sat untouched since October 11, 2019. Opens it to the first blank page after entry -412. He writes in blue ballpoint in his civil engineer's precise print, entry -413, November 3, 2024, below that 3 words, she got him. He underlines it twice. Then he closes the pad and puts it back in the drawer. Caitlin Ibarra is at her office in Portland when her phone buzzes. A text from Sandra, they arrested him, 7:14 this morning. Caitlin reads it twice, then she takes a screenshot, then another one, 2 screenshots, preserving the moment it was finally over the way she'd preserved Mara's texts for 12 years. She sits at her desk and cries quietly for 5 minutes. Then she goes back to work helping other families whose children are still missing, whose waiting isn't over yet. The trial begins on March 17, 2025 in Clackamas County Circuit Court. The prosecution presents the case methodically. Mara's notebook, page 47, the bent mirror cross-reference, Greaves's employment at McKinley Middle School, the Hargrove Road address, the timeline. The defense argues circumstantial evidence. No witnesses. No DNA after 12 years underground. No confession, but the prosecution has the glasses. On March 23rd, they present the forensic inventory. Everything found with Mara's remains is cataloged. Then the prosecutor says the glasses Mara Sinclair was wearing at 3:14 p.m. on October 11, 2012. The wire-rim glasses with the bent left arm, the glasses her mother described, her best friend described, teachers described, were not recovered at the burial site. They were taken. Then they present the search warrant inventory from Greaves's Bend residence. Bedroom nightstand, top drawer, 1 pair of wire-rim glasses, bent left arm, the exact bend from 7th grade. The glasses Raymond Greaves kept for 12 years. The jury deliberates for 6 hours. On April 2, 2025, they return. Sandra and David sit in the courtroom. Behind them, Caitlin. Detective Vasquez, who keeps a folded map in her jacket pocket, the 2012 timeline map with the 2-mile radius that was too small. Daniel Holt in the back row. The jury foreman stands. How do you find the defendant on the charge of murder in the first degree? Guilty. On the charge of kidnapping in the first degree? Guilty. The courtroom exhales. Sandra and David hold hands. Don't cry, don't speak, just sit. After the verdict, Vasquez stands in the courthouse hallway. She pulls the folded map from her jacket pocket, looks at it one more time. The 17 green sedans, the 2-mile boundary, the answer that was 2-3 miles outside the circle. I thought about her every day, Vasquez says to no one in particular, maybe to herself, maybe to Mara. I am glad she got to be right. She folds the map again, puts it back in her pocket, walks out into the April afternoon. On April 15, 2025, Raymond Douglas Greaves is sentenced to life without parole. Sandra and David don't attend, they've heard enough. On a Tuesday afternoon in late April, Daniel Holt walks to his car in the Whitmore Falls High School parking lot after 7th period. It's 3:15 p.m., students leaving, buses departing, the parking lot emptying. He sits behind the wheel, reaches for his mail from the passenger seat, the stack from his school mailbox. A supply catalog, a parking lot memo, a flyer for spring musical auditions, and a plain white envelope, business size, typed address. Return address, Clackamas County District Attorney's Office. Holt opens it, 3 paragraphs, signed by Deputy DA Rachel Mendez. The letter tells him Raymond Greaves was convicted April 2nd. The conviction was made possible by evidence Mara documented October 9th, evidence she shared with Holt the same day. His report to Detective Vasquez on October 12th became part of the investigative record. While the initial canvass didn't locate the perpetrator, his willingness to take Mara's concerns seriously demonstrated the vigilance educators should practice. The final paragraph: Mara's family has been informed of the role her documentation played in solving this case. They have asked me to convey their gratitude to you for listening to her when she needed someone to listen. Holt reads it once, twice, 3 times. Then he sets it on the passenger seat, leans forward until his forehead rests on the steering wheel, and sits there for 40 minutes while the parking lot empties completely around him. Teachers leave. The buses depart. The lot goes quiet. Holt sits in his car with the letter on the seat beside him and understands something he couldn't understand for 12 years. He did listen. He did report it. The boundary was just too small. It doesn't absolve him, but it's something. At 4:00 p.m., he finally starts his car, drives home. The letter goes in his desk drawer. He'll keep it there. We'll take it out on October 11 THS, on the days when the guilt becomes unbearable. But for now, it's enough to know Mara Sinclair was heard. Raymond Douglas Greaves is currently serving life without parole at Oregon State Penitentiary. He is 63 years old. He will die there. Sandra Sinclair still works at the clinic, still drives past the school sometimes. The blue ceramic mug is back in the cabinet, but she takes it out occasionally, uses it, lets it be a cup again instead of a monument. David Sinclair consults from home. His yellow legal pad, entry -413, the last thing he wrote, sits in his desk drawer. Closed, complete. Caitlin Ibarra runs her nonprofit. Still sends Sandra the first of the month text occasionally. In November, Sandra always texts back. Detective Rhonda Vasquez, retired, keeps the folded map in her jacket. A reminder that she did the work, asked the questions, drew a reasonable boundary. It was just 2-3 miles too small. Daniel Holt still teaches English, still lets students use his room during lunch, still listens when they say something feels wrong. The DA's letter is in his desk. He knows it's there. In a cemetery in Whitmore Falls. There's a headstone: Mara Juliet Sinclair, March 4, 1996, October 11, 2012. She noticed. She documented. She mattered. I want to understand how things work before I decide what I think about them. Mara Sinclair was 16 when she died, would be 28 now, would have finished graduate school, would be working on wetland restoration somewhere, making the world better in her careful, measured way. But she's 16. Forever. And what she left behind, page 47, dated October 9, 2012, written in her precise handwriting with the bent mirror detail that identified her killer, proves something fundamental about the power of documentation, of noticing, of leaving a record. You can silence a person, but you can't silence what they wrote down. Mara documented the pattern, left the evidence, made sure the truth would surface even if she couldn't be there to speak it. And 12 years later, from a grave on Hargrove Road, she solved her own case. This is what justice looks like: not restoration but accountability, not healing but witness, not closure but the refusal to forget. Mara Sinclair was here. She noticed things others missed. She wrote them down with care, and even in death she made sure the truth came out.